Subject for today, we're going over the imminent eruption of the Yellowstone Supervolcano. Now, for people who don't know, they say, what Yellowstone Supervolcano? When we talked about this show, I showed you this map, which maybe you can see. I don't see if you can see it or not. It's the map that go with the podcast. And this map shows where Yellowstone National Park is located. And the national park, well, most people don't know that underneath that glacier in Yellowstone, there is a ball of lava. And that ball of lava is twice as big as Lake Erie. Okay. And the Yellowstone has exploded 3 times before they know of in the history of the world. Okay. 2 of those eruptions of Yellowstone has been, of the 7 biggest eruptions in the history of the world, 2 of those Yellowstone eruptions have been on that list. Okay. Now, the last time it erupted, it was still on the list of the top 5, but it was near the bottom. It was only half as much. What we do not know is how big an eruption it will be. But the Yellowstone eruption is imminent. And this is something that they've been tracking for a very long time. And right now, it have calmed down for the last year or 2. But a few years ago, they was having massive problems in Yellowstone, where the roads, where the elevation of the land was going up or down. You was having what they called harmonic vibrations, where you have hundreds of earthquakes. And that is the sign of lava moving under the ground. And what scientists is trying to do with Yellowstone is they want to make it where they get to the point where they will be able to give a warning. So they keep planting more and more sensors and more type of things, because what they want to do is to be able to predict and give people some warnings if they feel that it is imminent, to give some people some time. So in the last year or 2, Yellowstone have calmed down. You are having less earthquake activity now. A few years ago you had gas coming off the glacier, and it was killing some of the bison. Right now, everything is peachy. So what is meant by the word imminent? What does the word imminent mean? Imminent means it could happen sometime within the next 1,000 years. Today or somewhere in the next 1,000 years, it could happen. The problem is we do not know the signs. And this is what we're trying to do. And what they're trying to do, which is very controversial, what they want to do over the next several years, which is going to be debated in court. They want to drill into the magma chamber. Okay. And by drilling into it, some scientists believe that will relieve some of the pressure. Some scientists believe that by drilling into the magma chamber might actually cause it to erupt, because you're going to be introducing air. And okay, you understand what I'm saying, don't you?
Might start something.
You might start something. And if we start something, how are we going to fix it? Okay. So this is something that they want to be debated, because the only thing we can do right now is monitor it from the surface, and we can monitor it with underground, we have ground penetrating radar. But okay, so let's talk about what a regular volcano. So is there any questions? Do you have any questions so far? About things
I'm
are going.
Just listening.
Okay. Because the difference between, most people do not understand a volcano versus a supervolcano. Okay. So the analogy, the best way I feel to understand everything is to always use analogies. Oops. Okay, we're having. Okay.
Sorry.
Okay, is to use analogies. Now, a volcano is the same as a pimple. If your skin was the surface of the earth, then a volcano would be a pimple on your skin. And when you get a pimple, it forms a little head, and eventually it will pop. That is a normal volcano. Okay. So we all know about blackheads, and we have all had a few of those right there. We had a few of those, right? Okay, excellent. Now,
in our lifetime. Yep.
Okay, those are normally you're able to do those yourself because they form a head and you can pop it with your nails. Some people are against that, or they will eventually pop by themselves.
Right.
But sometimes you get a pimple, and it is a deep pimple, and it does not make but there is no head,
Right.
because the pimple is so deep that what causes a pimple? The pimple is caused by either hair and dirt trapped under the skin, and that's what causes the head to form. But if it is a deep pimple, there is no head, and it will start forming a big ball under the skin.
Okay.
You right? And if it's very deep, it's hard to pop it, because if you squeeze the big bump, since there is no head, it's very hard to pop. And some of these balls can get very, very big. That's why there's a show that Lisa liked to watch, which is called what? The Pimple Lady. You know?
Yeah.
Okay, what's that show?
What you just said.
Okay, she likes to see these shows where they're popping these giant pimples and all the nasty stuff is coming out, because those pimples are so deep under the skin, nothing can come out. And in a lot of those, even when they cut it, everything this is the same thing that Yellowstone is. Yellowstone, there is no mountain on top of the glacier, because the magma is so deep under the earth that is the same as a deep pimple. So when you look at Yellowstone, when you look at a regular volcano, you see a mountain. The mountain is the pimple. At Yellowstone, there's no mountain because the pimple is too deep. And so all of that ball of yucky stuff is deep under the ground. And how much yucky stuff is underneath Yellowstone volcano? They estimate the magma chamber is twice the size of Lake Erie, which is humongously large. Okay. You get what I'm saying? And this is why when you look on that map, they are worried about it's going off. Because when you have a magma chamber that big, see, most of the time when a volcano go off, it has a very small magma chamber underneath the mountain. And when the most of the damage is caused when just like when you pop a pimple, it pops. That is what a volcano does. It pops and it blows off a part of the mountain when it pops. And that explosion is what kills people and what you call a pyroclastic flow. Because that side of the mountain, which is popped, turns into powder, dust. Okay, you get what I'm saying? But that dust is several hundred degrees hot. And that dust is radiating out at the force of the explosion. And if you get hit by a pyroclastic flow, you're dead, because it's several hundred degrees hot. And since it's traveling, you're just going to be, if it hits you, basically, they're just going to find a hollow shell of you, because you will be basically vaporized immediately. But your shell, that dust will actually coat you. And what you end up with is it will be like a statue of Lynn Livsey. This is what they find in Italy, over Mount Vesuvius. That was pyroclastic flow that destroyed that city in Roman times. And they find those remains of the people. Really, there's no remains. It was just a pyroclastic flow covered the people. And since it was so hot, their body basically melted. But that dust hardened and formed a casing or a statue or whatever you want to call it of what that person looked like. Did that make sense?
Okay. Wow.
Okay, so you can go over there and they have museums of some of the people, but that's probably not a good way to go. We will just say that. There's probably better ways to go. And the problem also with pyroclastic flow is that concrete is made by taking powder, the same kind of powder, and you mix it with water. So when you take the pyroclastic flow of a mountain, and when it's moving, if it contacts any type of water or water vapor, which is in the air, it turns into concrete. And this is the destructive power of every volcano, because that pyroclastic flow can travel for several miles. And even if you have a house, the roof of your home is designed to block wind or whatever. But if you get 2 or 3 inches of ash on top of your house, and then it rains, that ash is going to turn into concrete. And concrete is very heavy. It will crush your house. You see what I'm saying? Okay. Now, Yellowstone have exploded 3 times before. 640 million years ago. It seems to go off between 640 to 700 million years ago. That's the reason they say it's imminent. Okay. Before that, it was 120 million years ago. And then it was a big one around 2 point something million years ago. Those first 2 was humongous. Some of the biggest eruptions in the history of this world. Okay. But even the last one that went off in West Texas, there is, when you're digging, West Texas, there's nothing but desert out there. But when you start digging in the ground, you can come across ash. The ash in certain parts of West Texas can be 2 to 3 feet deep of ash. And that ash came from the last time Yellowstone exploded. So, could you imagine 2 or 3 feet of ash or cement on top of your house or on top of a building? It would basically crush anything. Mm-hmm. Okay. So it's not saying, well, I live 1,000 miles from the volcano, I'm not going to be affected. This is why those rings in that map is radiating out. Because the closer you are, the dark color is the kill zone, where you're just going to be killed by the blast itself and the heat. But after that, you have the effects of the ash, and the more ash that are falling, unless you're in an underground bunker, you're not going to survive. And even if you're in an underground bunker, if you got 4 or 5 feet of ash on top of the underground bunker, basically you're in a mausoleum down there, because there's no way to get you out. You are permanently in your underground shelter. There's no way to get you out, because they would have to drill through 3 to 4 feet of concrete just to get to your bunker.
Yeah. This
is why this event is, some people believe it's not survivable. Okay. You get what I'm saying? Okay. So this is the problem. Now, before everybody starts making plans to move to Mexico, this and that and everything else, let's talk about this. Okay.
Or South Texas.
Yes. Okay. The problem is this. With every volcano, just because the magma chamber is of a certain size, that does not mean that 100% of the lava in that magma chamber is going to erupt. Normally, you go off of a percentage. 20%, 40%, 60%. It depends on what the percentage is. This is why people don't want them drilling into the magma chamber. Mm-hmm. Because even if it erupts only 20% or 40% only, you understand what I'm saying, don't you? Now, this map that you're looking at is based off of if the entire magma chamber exploded. That probably would not happen. Okay. And this is the prediction that was based off of the last time. Remember, the last time, 640,000 years ago is when it went off last time. This was the amount that they're predicting. That it was around 40%. Okay. But we have no way of knowing. We have no way of calculating this. And some scientists, Yellowstone is not the only supervolcano in existence. And America's lucky. We have 3 supervolcanoes. And we have one that's located at Yellowstone and 2 more, which is near with the California border going that direction. So they're all located out west. Where most of these supervolcanoes are in places like Indonesia, India, and whatever. And when you look at these supervolcanoes going off, they seem to be going off in some kind of pattern. It seems like around every 26,000 years, one of these supervolcanoes somewhere in the world will erupt. And this is a major, and when you look at the evolution of animals, this dramatically affects where it goes off. You know, there's always these big die-offs of animals when you have these supermassive supervolcanoes go off. But basically every 26,000 years, one of these goes off somewhere in the world. And that's why, again, we're imminent, because we're heading towards polar shift. And the last supervolcano in the world that went off, the last one was in Indonesia. It went off 26,000 years ago. So it's time to play the game again. And they think Yellowstone is the lucky number. You understand what I'm saying? Okay. We're lucky. Okay. So if you want to call it that. But that's why they're thinking it's imminent that way. Now, 26,000 is not just a random number. 26,000, remember, this goes into precession, which we're going to go into a tangent subject. Remember, you was told as a kid that the stars do not move in the sky, that the stars are permanent, which is a lie. The stars actually move 1 degree every 70 years. Okay, and the Earth is moving, the North Pole is moving in a giant circle. So we can calculate this. So what they do, if you want to see what the sky looked like when Jesus was around, you have to rotate the sky back 1 degree every 70 years. Because the sky that, as Jesus saw it, is not the sky we have today. We don't even have the same sky that we had during slavery days. That's the reason when slaves was running away in the South, they were told to go towards the North Star. The North Star is not exactly pointing north anymore. It's pointing kind of, it moved a little bit. You see what I'm saying? Because in your lifetime, we are day flies. We live and die within the movement of one star. So if you take 70 times 360, you get 25,200 years. That is how long it takes the Earth to go in the cycle, which is to take one precession to go around in a complete circle. And that's the same amount of time every time we complete a circle. For some reason, a supervolcano seems to go off. Why is that? We don't know. Okay. We wasn't here. There was nobody there that was writing down things 25,000. Now, there was somebody who was here. The Anunnaki was here. That's why they know when the end is coming. They know when polar shift is going to start. They know because they was here for the they've been here for at least several 100,000 years. Okay. You remember, when they first came to our planet, they said, we did not exist yet. They said when they first came to the Earth, the old ones was here, which had leather feet, leather skin, and clover feet. Those are dinosaurs. So when the Anunnaki first came, the Earth had dinosaurs on it. So were they here that long ago? Okay. This is very scary. So they have been around, they know the science, and they know when how to tell the signs of when this thing is going to occur. That's the reason why in the flood of Noah's day, they was able to evacuate all of their people, and they decided not to tell us. And this time, they are promising to tell us. Okay. That is what this rapture is about, where some people will be taken up into the clouds, which we talked about before. Some people would be put under the ground for protection. Some people would be put in certain places on the surface for protection. Okay. But they know the signs. But so at the time going towards polar shift, it seems like Yellowstone is going to probably be around the same time. And this is going to be, I don't know if it's going to be before or right after, but somewhere in that time. But it all depends on the percentage of the magma chamber that will, erupt. Now, now, if the entire caldera was to go up, which probably not, no volcano used 100% of its magma. But if we go 40, 50%, that would devastate the United States. And that would basically, now in written history, just to let you know how much damage a volcano can do. In the last 200 years, well, going back, when Krakatoa exploded in the 1880s, that was the biggest explosion in modern times. That one killed, I think, Krakatoa killed like 600,000 people in Indonesia. The Dutch ruled all of that area, and it basically destroyed everything. The Dutch was done. Okay, the Dutch trading colonies was finished after that. It destroyed everything at all their islands. Okay. It destroyed all their ships, everything. It killed like 600,000 people. And that was and the explosion was heard 1,000 miles away. And in America, which from Indonesia is around a good 12,000 miles away. In America, the next year we had the year without summer, where it snowed all year long. That's how much damage Krakatoa was. In America, we never saw anything. We never heard anything. The only thing we got is very weird sunsets. And even in London, they was getting aurora borealis that year. But in America, the year after Krakatoa, it snowed all year long. That is how much of some of these giant volcanoes can affect the climate of the earth. Now, comparing Krakatoa to Yellowstone, Yellowstone is around probably 40 times, 50 times. If you took 40 or 50 Krakatoas and put them together, would probably be the damage that Yellowstone would do. So this might be not the year without summer. It might be the decade without summer all over the world. You understand what I'm saying? Okay. And this is why every time you have these supervolcanoes, you have these massive die-off of animals. Because if you get 10 years of where it's snowing year-round, that's going to kill a lot of things. Even a lot of people. Because we don't have food storage for that, right? Okay. So this would be a lot of damage that's affected. You have anything you want to add or any questions or anything you're worried about or you feel comfortable? You ready for this? You got your 3-year supply of food already stored in your house? And okay, so this is the problem we have. So even if you are Mormon and got your year supply of food and whatever, this basically is not going to help you. Okay. The only thing you can do is to move. And this is one thing we still don't know about. Since in recorded history, there's been too many ice ages. One happened around the time Jesus was born. It's like right before Jesus was born, you had a mini ice age. And you had one around 400 years after Jesus was born. You had another one. And those mini ice ages, we do not know what caused those two mini ice ages. Was that a volcano? Was that? We don't know. Okay. The only thing we know in both of those cases, the worldwide weather patterns changed. We don't have limited information on the one that occurred right before Jesus died, but we have massive documentation from the Romans on what happened in 400 AD. And in that one, you could no longer grow wheat above the Rhine River. Okay. And the people in Germany and Scandinavia were starving to death. And Rome did not want them to cross. And these people had axes and eventually, Rome agreed to let a few thousand of them cross, and millions of people crossed into Southern Europe. And these people carried heavy weapons and axes, and it's hard to tell, There's nothing you can do. Okay. And most people do not know about this, because you had the Goths and the Visigoths move to Southern Europe. And some of these people with blonde hair and blue eyes, they lived in Italy and parts of Southern Europe for over 100 years. And then when it warmed back up, they went back home. And they did not intermingle with the locals. You get what I'm saying? And it was not, no, we don't want you. They was not asking permission. Okay. And this is what made Rome fall. Because when all these people started moving around, and we know about some of these groups that was moving around. This is why all over Europe you had nations that was moving from one part of Europe to another part of Europe, because their crops was failing. And instead of starving to death quietly, especially if you got weapons and people and horses, you say, hey, we don't have no food. Those people over there got food. We'll take their food. Right? You don't think that would happen today? Okay. You understand what I'm talking about? Okay. This is the problem. And people all over Europe started moving around. Okay. You had a smaller problem, which we still don't know why, in 1000 AD, where it wasn't a mini ice age, but in 1000 it got cooler. Where you could still grow food in Germany, but in Denmark and Norway, it got to the point where growing food was very hard. That's the reason you had the Viking invasion, where you had tens of thousands of people in Norway and Denmark get on ships and leave, and they invaded Ireland, they invaded England, they invaded Russia, they invaded France. The Vikings was everywhere. And they was not saying please. They did not hold signs saying please give us food. No, they was raiders. They was taking everything. And basically the Vikings took over Ireland. Okay. You get what I'm saying? And they took over large parts of Europe. Okay. And these people was known as the Normans. The Normans are the people that conquered England. Amazing. They was in Europe. And in England and in France is because they could no longer feed their people in their own country. This is the problem with these giant volcanoes going off. This is the problem we're going to be having in the future, where people are going to be moving around and people are going to be doing this. And if we can't even... Right now, we had these little caravans, quote unquote, of a few thousand people trying to cross into America. What would we do if there was hundreds of thousands of people trying to cross? Or if Yellowstone was to really go off, what would you do if you got 300 million people in America? What would you do if 50 million people tried to go south all at one time? Would Mexico just say, oh, sure, we got extra room. Yeah, if 50 million Americans want to move to Mexico, sure, no problema.
Come on over.
Maybe we wouldn't ask. Because we got something called heavy weapons. You understand what I'm saying, don't you, right? Okay. And if we need that land over there, would we say, do you mind if we plant some crops over there? Or are we going to say, hey, we're going to do whatever we want to, right? Okay. See, this is the problem. So this is why we have a lot these dark clouds in the future. I am not going to tell you that you should move to Mexico now. You should do this. You should do that. But we know there's some very bad clouds on the horizon. We have Yellowstone. We have climate change that are making these super hurricanes. And what would happen if Mexico got hit? I told you before, the highest level of hurricane was a category 5. They have now made it where they predict a hurricane can now go up to a 6 or a 7. If you got hit by a level 7 hurricane, you're talking about winds of over 300 miles an hour. That would suck the air out of your lungs. That is not survivable. And if Mexico got hit by a level 6 or 7 hurricane, or Texas got hit, or Florida got hit, that is not survivable. It's not, we're going to, put people in tents and we're going to, there's nothing left. You see what I'm saying? This is the future we are facing with we got a lot of these little problems. So my thing is not to scare you, is not to tell you to go and hide under your bed or to do whatever. It's just to let you know. Because what they don't want to tell us about these issues. And if you type into Google Yellowstone, they're talking about, now they're trying to say it is not a threat anymore, because I told you over the last few years, it had calmed down. But 5 years ago, when Yellowstone was having all of these harmonic vibrations, which they was having sometimes hundreds of earthquakes at a time, they was really worried about Yellowstone could go at any moment. And why did it stop? No one knows. And now you're having a lot of super tiny earthquakes. And now you're not having them around Yellowstone anymore. Now you're having a lot of what is called harmonic, these harmonic vibrations, these super tiny earthquakes in California, especially along the San Andreas faults. Sometimes you're getting dozens of earthquakes a day along that fault line. And there are people saying that the big one is imminent in California. Yes. But we played this game before and we scared all the people of California back in the late 60s, early 70s, and it didn't happen. It's the game of scaring people, saying the sky is falling. And everybody got mad. A lot of people left, sold their houses, this and that, and the sky didn't fall.
Yeah, but it's going to.
Okay.
In California.
Okay. But if you have a house out west, should you sell your house and move to South Texas or to move to the East Coast? Because, maybe next year or 10 years from now that you understand what I'm getting at, right?
Yeah.
Okay. So this is why we really don't know. And we do not have the scientific equipment at this time who can predict this. We know that the big one is coming in California, right? The signs are there. Okay. And the big one in California, they will say too, is imminent. Okay. Imminent. Where they are expecting a level 10 earthquake in California. It is imminent. But what's imminent? Tomorrow, 5 years from now, 10 years from now, 20 years from now, they don't know. But with my luck, the day I move out there and buy a house, it would be the next day. Okay, you know what I'm saying, don't you? Okay, so you just don't know. You just don't know. But at least you need to be aware of these issues. And why is it important to be aware of these issues? Because when because when you start hearing people start talking crazy, especially the scientists, start talking about, hey, the ground is elevating again. The bison are acting very strange. We're having gas releases from underneath the ground. This what was happening. 5-10 years ago in Yellowstone, they was having a lot of very weird things. Okay, the ground was actually going up and down. Okay, maybe that was not the year to go and visit the park. You get what I'm saying, don't you? Maybe it's safe to go and visit the park now, but I wouldn't have went anywhere near that park back at that time. Okay, and if you live close, if something start to go tragically wrong, you have to have an evacuation plan.
Which is what we talked about before.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay. Because if you're living in the kill zone, what is the kill zone? Which is probably 200 miles around Yellowstone volcano. If that thing erupts, even if 20% goes off, the force of that explosion will probably kill everybody within 100, 200 miles of radius of that explosion. Okay, that is unsurvivable. It's not the heat of the blast, it's the pyroclastic flow, that wave of heat where that wind is pushing that concrete, that volcanic dust which is several hundred degrees hot. It can't touch you. If it touches you, your car, your house, anything.
But can people get out in time? Like if it started happening?
But how do we know? That's the problem. This is the problem they're having in California. They predict a fire. So this year, they turn off the electricity to large areas because they say they predict a fire this weekend. And then when a fire doesn't start, the people get mad. And then if it do see, you're damned if you do, you're damned if you don't. So if they say tomorrow, if they was to say, okay, we think something's going to happen, and you packed up all your stuff and moved and spent $1,000 moving your family and your stuff, and you went all the way to St. Louis, Missouri, and you stayed over there for a month and nothing happens, I think you're going to be pretty pissed off, right? Because you wasted all that money, that, everything else, and you're going to be pissed. Right? But if they tell you nothing and something happens, then you're going to be crying, how come they didn't tell us?
Right. Yeah.
So you have to be able to read the signs yourself. And if you're started getting all these reports of strange things happening at the park, and it got so bad in Yellowstone around 5 years ago, they actually closed the park for like a week or two. Because one person got, the geyser went off so strong that it actually burnt a person. You get what I'm saying? Okay. So if they're talking about closing the park and this and that, and the bisons are acting funny and gas releases and everything, maybe you need to pack an emergency bag and just keep the radio, on to that emergency station if you need to during that time.
So what you're telling everybody is to be aware of your surroundings. Correct?
Right, because we all have areas. So we're not picking only on Yellowstone. Everywhere you live, you have to know what is your problem zone. If you live along the coast of the Atlantic or the Pacific Ocean, you have the danger of tsunami. And if you see strange signs or strange things or hear about strange stuff, you got to, right? Okay. And
backpack.
Right. And if you live in a very forested area, and if you start hearing strange signs, it haven't rained in a month or two, and it's a lot of thunder and lightning outside and whatever, or or if you see those lights where it looks like there's a fire at night, you got to know where you live and what is the danger in your area. Okay, see no evil, hear no evil doesn't work anymore, because we like depending upon the government to save our asses. The problem is you might have to save your own ass, right? And this is what happened to the people in Paradise, California. The government didn't save their ass. right? Most of the people that made it out on their own. They came by in the middle of the night, beating on your door, saying, "We need you out immediately." And even people that tried to get out, they was driving through the fire trying to get out. This also happened in Canada a few months ago, where they had an evacuation there the same way. They was beating on people's doors in the middle of the night. And they didn't make it to every house.
Yeah.
Okay.
And that's what I'm saying. Could, if something happened, could people make it out in time?
Okay, the same thing.
We don't know.
Same thing if
Yeah.
if you live like in Oregon or Washington, D.C., if you hear that there was a major earthquake off the coast of Japan, are you going to be hit by a tsunami 90 minutes later or not? You don't know, right? They have a warning system that is set up along the coast to give you 5-10 minute warning. What are you going to do with a 5-minute warning when you're just getting out of bed and you got that big 5-minute warning? Okay. You need more warning than that. So you have to know if something happens like that, you got to have that, you got to at least.
Yeah.
Right? So this is our meeting for today. Our thing is to let you know, remember, ignorance is blissful, but in today's thing, FEMA is not saving people's ass like they did before. The same thing with the floods in Houston, the same thing that happened in Florida. For some reason, FEMA used to be saving our asses. We could count on them. In the last few hurricanes or disasters, you're on your own now. They're only there after the fact to give you a free blanket, water, and to give you those low interest loans after the disaster. Okay, you understand what I'm saying, don't you? They always want to give you a low interest loan to help you rebuild. That's not helping. Okay, you know what I'm saying, don't you? Okay. See, but you're going to have to save your own ass. And the problem with these hurricanes, they tell people, well, you can evacuate if you want to. We suggest you leave. And what happened in Florida last time, the hurricane went up the coast, and some people in southern Florida evacuated to central Florida. Then they evacuated to northern Florida, and then they evacuated, and the hurricane kept following them up the coast. You see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And if they would have stayed home, maybe they would. See, you don't know. This is the problem. You want a guarantee. They was told the hurricane was heading towards South Florida to get out of South Florida. But it didn't hit South Florida. It kept going up the coast.
Yeah.
So did you get reimbursed for all that money you spent going up the coast? Yeah. All those hotels, meals, this and that, everything. You see what I'm saying?
Yep.
We don't have no solution. But at least you have to try. The best thing you can do in life is try your best. Mm-hmm. If you try and it works, you can say, I tried. If you don't try and you say, I could have got out, I could have did this, you got to do your best. Mm-hmm. But there is no right or wrong. There is no great answer. So, unfortunately, we don't have any solutions to this problem. But hopefully, before this occurs, we will have some sign. And we will have some warning. You just need to pay attention. And remember, as long as you're listening to these programs, if I get any indication of anything crazy going on, I will definitely announce it and let you know, and we will do a special program on it.